Remember this scene from the movie Too Fast, Too Furious? The cars racing each other are Nissan, Honda, Mazda, and Toyota. These Japanese automakers have also long been fierce rivals off-screen, which is why this was so significant.
Nissan and Honda have agreed to start talks to merge under a holding company.
Before, in a dramatic reversal, the plan was dropped.
Honda and Nissan are to scrap tie-up talks as both car makers report results.
The drama is really a reflection of a larger struggle.
Japanese car makers are seeing one of the biggest threats to their global domination of the automobile industry that they've ever seen.
It's a cautionary tale, particularly for automakers like Honda and Nissan, that you just can't become complacent.
So why are Japanese car makers losing their edge? And are some at risk of running out of road?
You really feel the music with the Sony Walkman.
The 70s and 80s, a time when Japanese brands seemed to be everywhere.
Blow your opponent away.
Japan's global dominance didn't stop at consumer electronics, it also extended to cars.
1970 found U.S. automakers in a global automotive battle as Japanese manufacturers were challenging the older makers in Europe and the U.S.
Essentially, Japanese automakers had the right product at the right time. In the early 70s, when you saw the global oil shock and gasoline prices were spiking in North America, they had economical cars that they had developed over decades under really tight manufacturing constraints. And that's when they really gained a foothold into the US market.
If you think back to the 1980s, Japanese automakers were dominant in many parts of the world. Their cars were known for their reliability, their durability.
Fast forward to now, and out of the 10 largest car producers in the world, 3 are Japanese. But there are signs that they're starting to lose their edge.
Japanese automakers are really seeing their market share erode, particularly here in Asia.
That's especially significant given that Asia accounts for more than 50% of passenger car sales globally. Over the last 5 years, look at how much market share Japanese car makers have lost in China and other key markets like Indonesia, Thailand, and Singapore. Back in 1998, Japan was the leading car maker globally, making about 1/5 of all passenger cars. Now, that's fallen by almost half. There are 2 key reasons why. First, electrification.
Nissan was actually one of the world's pioneers of electric vehicles.
A zero-gas, 100% electric Nissan Leaf. Innovation for the planet.
It released the Nissan Leaf in 2010, and it was, very popular. It went on to sell very well in around 60 markets all around the world.
But you can kind of argue now that maybe they were too early, because what we've seen in the interim is continued demand for hybrid vehicles, pure combustible engine cars. And so they never really sort of captured the market with the right product at the right time, at least when it comes to battery-based EVs.
Meanwhile, major players like Toyota never committed fully to EV technology.
They wanted to have a wide range of offerings for their customers, from pure gasoline-burning engines to hybrids to battery-based EVs.
So what's been the issue?
Where they have fallen a bit short is having the right battery-based EV at the right price.
Which brings us to the second key reason Japan fell behind. Remember this chart? Look at what happens when we add the market share of Chinese car makers. And remember how Japan lost its place as the #1 car producer globally? Well, guess who took over? Much of China's edge has been driven by a company that was unheard of a few years ago.
BYD, the biggest car brand you've never heard of. There's competitors now ramping up.
Back in 2011, Elon Musk did an interview and he was asked what he thought about BYD. And he sort of stopped and he gave a bit of a chuckle and he said,
"Have you seen their car?"
And that was a fair comment. At the time, BYDs were quite dinky, they were boxy little cars.
But fast forward a decade,
it wasn't particularly close in the fourth quarter. BYD outsold Tesla by about 42,000 EVs. They're now ahead on a global basis. This is a company that has kind of, out-Tesla'd Tesla in the last couple of years.
I think one of the reasons why BYD has been so successful, and this holds true to a degree for the other Chinese automakers, is that they've really managed to come out with electric cars across all price points on the spectrum.
BYD's rapid growth has meant that it's been able to quickly overshadow its smaller Japanese rivals. And it's part of the reason this happened.
Japanese media reporting that Honda and Nissan are aiming to finalize a merger agreement as soon as June.
The idea of them combining with Honda taking the lead would have been unthinkable years ago.
But Nissan in particular has been struggling to keep its edge, especially after the rather dramatic exit of its former chairman, Carlos Ghosn.
Carlos Ghosn arrested in Tokyo over suspected breach of Japanese financial trading laws.
The Great Escape, a fallen automotive giant Carlos Ghosn flees to Lebanon, saying he couldn't get a fair trial in Japan.
Ghosn has denied any wrongdoing.
Carlos Ghosn was really pursuing this high volume strategy. And, when Carlos Ghosn left in quite spectacular fashion, Nissan embarked on a 3-year cost-cutting program. In November 2024, we have this really quite disastrous day for Nissan.
Nissan says it will cut 9,000 jobs and reduce manufacturing capacity by 1/5 as the Japanese automaker struggles with plummeting sales and profits.
1 month later, Honda entered the picture. The idea of the pair working together was, in reality, born out of need. They knew merging their cultures and R&D would be extraordinarily challenging, but pooling resources seemed like a way to compete in the future EV industry.
These two companies operate in a lot of the same market. They're both really behind.
No, in my opinion, it's a desperate move.
And then, in February,
Nissan is cutting its full-year operating income forecast. This, as we see, a conclusion of talks between Honda and Nissan, and that conclusion is that we are not going anywhere with this deal.
So does this mean that Japanese cars may suffer the same fate as the Walkman? Well, it's not all doom and gloom. Despite being rivals, Japanese car companies are starting to work together.
They're doing things like sharing software, they're collaborating on R&D.
Toyota and Nissan have really taken a hard look at solid-state batteries. These are batteries that are going to be cheaper to build, longer range, and quicker to charge.
And after all, Toyota remains the largest car producer in the world by quite a distance.
For Toyota, will they ever not exist? That is, hard to think. Perhaps there will be a time when Japanese automakers, some of these names do fade into obscurity.
When you consider the threat that the Japanese automakers are facing, really it's not any different from what Volkswagen is seeing, what Ford is seeing. The really big question is whether they can embrace change, bring in new ideas, and really do what they do best, which is perfect those ideas to stay relevant in the coming years and decades.